Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this material today. We're going to unpack a concept that is literally central to understanding how we, as human beings, differ from one another, and how we manage to adapt to the crazy world around us. We're talking about intelligence, but we're going to push way past the everyday common sense notions you might have and discover what it truly means to be smart, according to the science of psychology.
Okay, do me a favor. Take a second and actually picture the most intelligent person you know in your mind's eye. You got them? Now ask yourself, what exactly makes them so smart? Are you thinking of their mental alertness? A ready wit? Are they just incredibly quick at learning? Or maybe they just always pulled the absolute highest grades in school? Or is it something deeper, like an incredible ability to understand complex relationships? Keep that person in mind, because our definition of what makes them intelligent might completely shift by the end of this.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with defining intelligence, look at the evolution of theories, explore multiple forms of intelligence, talk about measuring the mind, and finally, wrap up with culture and emotion.
Starting right off with Section 1, Defining Intelligence.
So how do we even put words to such a complex human attribute? Well, it turns out the psychological notion of intelligence is actually quite different from the common sense notion. There's a really interesting contrast here. The Oxford Dictionary gives us that everyday explanation. It's the power of perceiving, learning, and knowing. But if we look at early psychology, specifically Alfred Binet, who was one of the very first psychologists to tackle this, the focus shifts. Binet argued that intelligence is the ability to judge well, understand well, and reason well. So it moves from just passively knowing facts to actively making judgments and reasoning through problems. But perhaps the most functional definition we have comes from David Wechsler. And by the way, his intelligence tests are actually the most widely used today. Notice his phrasing here. Intelligence isn't just about reciting trivia. It's a global capacity to act purposefully and, crucially, to deal effectively with the environment. This is a massive takeaway. Intelligence provides an understanding of how people adapt their behavior based on the environment they live in. It's highly practical.
Moving on to Section 2, The Evolution of Theories.
As psychology grew as a field, this idea of a single adaptability factor became highly debated. It's like a giant puzzle that researchers kept adding pieces to. In 1905, Binet started with a unifactor theory. That's the idea that intelligence is just one similar set of abilities you use for literally every problem. Simple enough, right? But then, in 1927, Charles Spearman looked at the data and proposed a two-factor theory. He said, okay, sure, we have a general intelligence factor, a G factor, but we also have specific abilities, or S factors. Like a great architect and a brilliant singer might both be high in general intelligence, but they have totally different specific skills. Later on, Louis Thurstone shattered that single-factor idea entirely, proposing 7 primary mental abilities that are relatively independent of one another.
Which brings us to Section 3, Multiple Forms of Intelligence.
So this realization that we possess a matrix of specific cognitive skills led modern theorists to completely shatter the old single-factor myth. Howard Gardner suggests there are at least 8 different kinds of intelligence, and we've pulled out 4 really fascinating ones here. You have linguistic intelligence, making poets and writers word-smart. Then, logical mathematical intelligence, which drives scientists to solve complex, abstract problems. But then look at the bottom 2. Intrapersonal intelligence, that deep understanding of your own internal feelings and motives, like you'd see in a philosopher. And naturalistic intelligence, the ability to recognize subtle patterns in nature, which is absolutely essential for a farmer. Under Gardner's theory, the poet, the scientist, and the farmer are all exhibiting distinct, equally valid forms of intelligence.
And this brilliantly illustrates another modern approach, Robert Sternberg's Triarchic theory of intelligence. Sternberg proposed 3 basic types: componential, which is your analytical problem solving; experiential, how your past experiences affect your smarts; and contextual. Sternberg basically argued that highly intelligent people don't just passively adapt to their environment. No, they actively shape it, modify it, and literally select environments that help them accomplish their goals. It's a real game changer for how we view the mind at work.
All right, Section 4, Measuring the Mind. So, we know intelligence is multifaceted, but how do psychologists actually attach numbers to these complex cognitive functions? You've definitely heard of IQ, but here is the actual formula, devised by German psychologist William Stern back in 1912. IQ stands for intelligence quotient.
To get it, you take a child's mental age, which is their performance level compared to the average of an age group, divide it by their actual biological age or chronological age, and multiply by 100 just to drop the decimal. So, to put that into perspective, if a 10-year-old child tests with the mental age of a 12-year-old, you divide 12 by 10, multiply by 100, and bam, you get a pretty impressive IQ of 120.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how those IQ scores are distributed across the population. Notice this bell curve here. See that peak right in the middle? That is the average IQ of 100. The vast majority of us fall right between 90 and 110. But if you look over at the far left, scores below 70 indicate a suspected intellectual disability, which is usually marked by deficits in adaptive behavior. On the far right, scores above 130 indicate exceptional talent or giftedness. Only about 2.2% of the population falls into that very superior category.
But we have to be super careful here. We can't equate giftedness solely with brilliant test scores. Gifted children show signs that go way beyond a high IQ number. They exhibit high speed in processing information, for sure, but also advanced levels of highly original, creative thinking. They're intensely motivated from within, and they frequently engage in independent, nonconformist thinking. They march to the beat of their own drum. Giftedness is really this complex combination of high ability, creativity, and just deep, deep commitment to a task.
Finally, let's head into Section 5, Culture and Emotion.
Up to now, we've kind of treated intelligence like it exists in a vacuum, but it doesn't. As the Russian psychologist Vygotsky pointed out, culture provides the social context for how we understand the world. What is considered smart completely depends on where you live. In technologically advanced Western societies, intelligence is heavily focused on personal achievement, speed, analysis, and reasoning. But in non-Western cultures, intelligence is viewed far more integrally. It places massive value on self-reflection, social competence, and how well you relate to other people. The environment completely dictates the adaptation.
A perfect example of this integral view is the Sanskrit concept of buddhi from the Indian tradition. Buddhi is so much broader than the Western cognitive definition. I mean, yes, it includes knowledge and mental effort, but it equally integrates determined action, feelings, and a deep knowledge of one's own self based on conscience and will. It's the whole shebang. It proves that motivation and emotional components are absolutely fundamental to true intelligence.
So the crucial point is, a high IQ simply isn't a golden ticket to guarantee success in life. And this brings us to emotional intelligence, or EQ, a concept introduced by Sally and Mayer. You probably know people who are academically brilliant, right? But maybe they struggle immensely in their personal lives or at work. What they might be lacking is EQ, the ability to accurately read their own emotions, read the emotions of others, and then actually use that information to effectively guide their behavior. It's basically the feeling side of intelligence, and it is absolutely vital for adapting to our social environments.
So we've seen today that intelligence is definitely not just a single score. It's a dynamic, culturally shaped, emotionally integrated capacity to understand the world and adapt to it. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. As our world environment rapidly changes, becoming more interconnected and infinitely more complex, is our current standardized definition of smart truly ready for the future? What new forms of intelligence are we going to need to adapt next? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. I really hope this has totally rewired how you think about the human mind.